He chose 6 covers out of 14 songs for MTV Unplugged. But nobody realized that every one of those choices was a clue. Each track carried a hidden meaning, a whisper of farewell. When Cobain stepped on to that candlelit stage, he wasn't merely performing. He was sending a message, drenched in sorrow, wrapped in melody. In this video, we uncover the coded signals in every note and lyric. We break down the eerie patterns in song selection, stage design, and vocal delivery. By the end, the number one clue will blow your mind. The first clue hides in the very opening chords of All Apologies. You know that familiar acoustic strum, soft and tentative, carrying a fragile weight. That fragile weight wasn't accidental. It reflected a spirit weakened by pain. Notice how the progression resolves on a descending minor seventh, leaving a lingering sense of emptiness. That choice wasn't random. Kurt wanted his audience to feel unsettled from the first second. He set the tone for a memorial service, not a concert. The candles at his feet burned low, matching the fading glow in his eyes. Every element whispered a haunting goodbye. Hidden between tracks 2 and 3 lies a subtle link few noticed. When Kurt introduced Something in the Way, he paused longer than usual, his gaze fixed on the ground. That hesitation was a message in itself. He was staring at memories that lurked beneath the surface. A childhood marked by abandonment and pain. The song's droning melody echoed his isolation, and the whispered backing vocals hinted at a spirit slipping away. Even the placement of the song in the setlist felt deliberate. It was nestled between louder songs to create a moment of eerie stillness, a quiet breath before the final descent. Now let's shift to the visuals. That funeral-like stage design, complete with black candles and delicate lilies, wasn't mere theatrics. It was a living portrait of grief. Cobain arranged every prop with intention. The chandelier overhead cast shifting shadows, creating an atmosphere of impermanence. The fallen petals strewn across the floor symbolized fragility, as though life itself was wilting away. Even the muted color palette tied back to themes of death and farewell. If you look closely, you'll see how the mirror behind him created a fractured reflection, suggesting a soul split between worlds. Contrast that stark setting with the warmth of the acoustic guitar in the third song, The Man Who Sold the World. Cobain's voice trembles with irony as he narrates a meeting with a stranger. But that intimacy masks a deeper betrayal, his own sense of self tearing apart. Notice the way he leans into each lyric, as if clinging to a fading memory. And when the chords transition from major to minor, that shift carries a profound sense of loss. It's as though the song itself experiences a love torn down to its foundations, echoing Kurt's fractured identity. Beyond song choices and stage props, Cobain's physical performance reveals hidden signals. Observe how he grips his guitar neck, fingers curled tensely as if bracing for impact. His shoulders slump in a gesture of surrender, while his head bows with the weight of unspeakable secrets. At times he closes his eyes, allowing anguish to seep through every note. Then, almost imperceptibly, he uncurls his wrist, opening to vulnerability, exposing raw emotion. That small release speaks louder than any chorus. It's a silent confession that resonates with anyone who's ever carried a burden too heavy to bear alone. Even the audience's reaction serves as part of the hidden narrative. You'll notice a hush descending after All Apologies. Murmurs replace applause. Fans sense something beyond performance, an intimate sharing of pain. When Cobain jokingly mutters, "That's it, no encore," the relief from the crew mingles with collective sorrow. They know they've witnessed more than a concert. Witness the cameraman's lingering shot on Kurt's face as he takes his final bow. That gaze captures disbelief, gratitude, and heartbreak all at once. It's a shared moment of farewell between artist and audience, a silent pact sealed in grief. Finally, we arrive at the clue that most viewers miss, the one that ties everything together. In the final cover, "Where Did You Sleep Last Night?" Cobain's delivery goes beyond music. He prowls the melody like a ghost haunting its former home. But pay attention to his final howl. The note that stretches beyond the song's closing chord. That piercing scream is not just emotional punctuation. It's a tear in time, a rift between life and something else. When the feed cuts to black, you're not losing the image. The sound leaves you in stunned silence, absorbing the weight of farewell left unspoken. Beyond the stage props and song choices, Kurt dropped whispers in the way notes began and ended. Listen to the very start of "Come As You Are." That first electric lick rings out stalled, almost as if someone flicked the power off for a split second. Then it surges back, brimming with distorted warmth. It's a musical metaphor for stumbling back into consciousness. An echo of his own daily battle with addiction and mental fog. Notice how the echo tail lingers longer than expected, creating an unsettling dissonance. That extra reverberation wasn't a studio glitch. It was a coded signal of a mind straining for clarity. By weaving that tension into the intro, Kurt invited listeners to step into his haze, sharing a moment of disorientation before he even spoke a word. Shift your ears to the transitions between songs. Between "About a Girl" and "Polly," the audio engineers let a barely audible hiss slip through. It's not noise. They left in the sound of the cassette tape rewinding, a heartbeat like reminder of fragility. That tiny imperfection turns a live set into a private confession tape. When you catch that hiss, you're not just hearing equipment reset, you're witnessing a loop of memories he couldn't escape. Each rewind suggests a moment he replayed in his head, over and over, unable to find an exit. The absence of corrective editing here feels deliberate. Kurt wanted his pain laid bare, without polish, so every listener felt the raw edges of his reality. Now consider the leaked rehearsal tapes that surfaced decades later. In take 4 of "Plateau," you hear a strained, "I don't have the passion anymore," muttered under his breath. It wasn't meant for public ears, yet he never muted it. That line, delivered in an offhand tone, carries the weight of a resignation note embedded in music. Producers had a chance to erase it, to tuck it into the cutting room floor, but chose authenticity over comfort. By preserving that moment, they immortalized a candid snapshot of Kurt's final creative breath. Anyone playing that tape hears more than a rehearsal mistake. They discover a man at the edge of giving up, confessing his collapse in real time. Camera angles also deliver secret messages. Notice in the wide shot during "Come As You Are" how the camera tilts ever so slightly off-center. That skewed perspective jars viewers subconsciously, suggesting nothing about this performance is straightforward. It's a technical decision that mirrors the unstable footing Kurt felt. Compare that to the perfectly centered close, up on his face during all apologies. In that shot, the symmetry lulls you into focused attention, almost like sitting in a confessional booth. Then, when the frame shifts back to a lopsided view, the comfort dissolves, replicating the emotional whiplash he endured on stage and off. These framing choices reinforce the narrative, guiding viewers' feelings without a word spoken. On a more granular level, watch how his guitar strings respond under his fingers. During "The Man Who Sold the World," you'll see a string snap mid-verse, and he doesn't pause. Instead, he plucks another string, carrying on. That quick pivot is more than a display of musicianship, it's symbolic of his survival instinct. When everything fell apart, strings, life, or sanity, he kept playing. But look at his hand after the break. There's a tremor. A micro-second where his palm hovers above the fretboard. That silent hesitation betrays exhaustion and pain. If you frame that moment, you catch a glimpse of a man teetering on collapse, yet determined to finish the song. Finally, there's the mic placement itself. In certain songs, the mic hovers lower than usual, aiming at his chest rather than his mouth. That positioning captures the thump of his rib cage, amplifying the physicality of his breathing. You can hear each exhale, each gasp as part of the rhythm. By emphasizing that heartbeat, Kurt made the audience feel his pulse pounding beneath the music. It's a visceral reminder that this performance wasn't just an auditory experience. It was a bodily chronicle of his final days. When the mic dips that low, the line between performer and person dissolves. You're listening to his last living breath, filtered through a microphone. There's a clue hiding in the clothing Kurt wears on that unplugged stage. Take note of his striped sweater, black and gray bands fading into one another. At first glance, it's just grunge fashion. But in context, it becomes a living metaphor for the blurred line between life and death. The narrow gray stripes represent the thin moments of hope that punctuated his final days, while the wider black bands speak to the enveloping darkness he carried. When the stage lights hit that sweater, the stripes seem to shift and pulse, mirroring the unstable rhythm of his heartbeat. There's a fleeting instant during Dumb, when a candle's glow dances across those bands, making the gray almost disappear, an ominous visual echo of a soul slipping away. Look closer at his watch, or absence of one. Early in the set, there's a tight shot of Kurt adjusting his sleeve. You expect to see a band on his wrist marking time. Instead, his forearm is bare. By removing any symbol of hours or minutes, he rejects measurement of life in linear terms. It's as if he's telling us that conventional time no longer applies to him. He's living on borrowed moments. Later, during Pennyroyal Tea, the camera pulls back, and you glimpse him glancing at the mic stand where his guitar strap hooks, almost as if searching for an anchor in a world unmoored. Those silent searches remind us how tenuous his grasp on reality had become. Another layer hides in the placement of setlist cards taped to the floor. For most artists, those cards stay neatly arranged. Kurt's are scattered, some overlapping, some turned sideways, others partially hidden by guitar pedals. That disarray isn't mere backstage chaos. It visualizes his fractured focus and precarious mental state. In the opening moments of About a Girl, he sweeps his boot across a card, obscuring the very title he intended to play. That small stumble signals a departure from intention into improvisation, reflecting how his later performances often veered unpredictably. When he pauses to glance down, there's a subtle flinch, an acknowledgement that he's skating on thin ice every time he plays. Now consider the handwritten notes on those cards. If you zoom in, you can spot marginalia, cryptic scribbles like "breathe" and "slow down." On the "all apologies" cue sheet, someone etched "forgive." These aren't stage directions for a crew. They're personal mantras or pleas. It's as though Kurt, even in his final days, needed reminders to stay present, to calm the storm inside. Those notes contrast sharply with the raw fury he unleashed in Sliver earlier in his career. Here, we see a man pleading with himself to be gentler, softer, more at ease. Underscoring the emotional barometer of the unplugged set, let's shift focus to eye contact, or lack thereof. During most songs, Kurt deliberately avoids looking into the camera. Instead, he gazes at empty space, as if seeing ghosts just beyond the frame. When he takes a rare moment to meet the lens during Come As You Are, his eyes appear glassy and unfocused, flickering with regret and longing. That brief connection feels like a silent confession to every viewer. I'm here, but I'm not. Compare that to standard live performances, where artists lock eyes with the audience to build rapport. Kurt's refusal creates a barrier, a veil of separation that conveys isolation more powerfully than any lyric. Hidden in the background is another subtle cue: the arrangement of the supporting musicians. The meat puppets stand slightly behind him, their instruments unmiked until the mid-set introduction. They're nearly invisible at first, ghost figures providing distant echoes. That spatial distance underscores his self-imposed exile. Normally, guest artists step forward in the spotlight, but here Kurt keeps them half hidden, as if reluctant to share the stage or unwilling to fully engage with the world. When he finally nods them in, it feels more like a formal acknowledgement than genuine celebration, reinforcing the theme of reluctant goodbyes. Finally, there's a delicate interplay between silence and sound that most fans overlook. Pay attention to the moments just before Kurt starts singing each song. The audience holds its breath, creating a pregnant pause that feels heavier than applause. And after he finishes a line, sometimes for several beats, no one in the room dares to exhale. That collective restraint weaves itself into the recording as dead air, an oral gap that heightens tension. Kurt draws those silences out, prolonging them with an almost ceremonial gravity. It's as if he's allowing space for each word to settle in our hearts, giving time for the gravity of his message to sink in before he moves on. All these elements converge to reveal a deeper narrative. This unplugged performance was never meant to be just a concert. It was a final testament, structured like a farewell letter in 12 keys and 6 covers. Each choice, from wardrobe and setlist scribbles to stage spacing and pauses, served as a coded signal, a breadcrumb trail leading to the truth Kurt could no longer speak aloud. When you look beyond the iconic acoustic riffs and haunting vocals, you discover a carefully orchestrated mosaic of mortality, a symphony of goodbyes disguised as songs. The question isn't what he sang, it's why he sang it this way. Now consider the lyrics he sings in, All Apologies. When Cobain enunciates, I wish I was like you, the emphasis on the word was dragged, almost as if he's mourning a past self. That subtle vocal stretch occurs only in that phrase, then vanishes for the rest of the song. It's a fleeting lament disguised in melody. Similarly, in Come As You Are, when he pronounces A's a friend, the Allah becomes elongated, as though he's clinging to a fragile hope of belonging. That tiny prosodic choice frames the line, not as an invitation, but as a desperate plea. Shift your attention to tuning subtleties. Cobain's guitars on the unplugged stage were tuned down to D standard, creating a somber timbre that resonates an octave lower than expected. That downward shift casts each song in shadow, imprinting a feeling of weight and gravity. In a studio track, producers might correct that tuning for clarity, but here they preserve the dip. By letting the guitar breathe at that lower pitch, Kurt ensured every chord carried a hint of an omen, a sonic premonition that lurked beneath the surface of each lyric. Then there's the structural contrast between his own compositions and the covers. When All Apologies follows Where Did You Sleep Last Night, the transition spans a minor third, rather than a typical perfect fourth progression. That unexpected leap jars listeners, forcing them to register each song as a separate statement. It underscores the rupture he felt between his public persona and private anguish. It also helped manage audience emotion. Fans braced themselves during the build-up of Where Did You Sleep Last Night? And by contrast, the reprise of All Apologies arrives like a distant echo, softening the blow while highlighting the emotional cliff he was teetering on. Beyond these musical signposts, watch the lyric. In the sun, I feel as one. He sings that line with palpable hesitance, almost like he's testing its truth. The microphone captures a subtle stutter on the word, sun, then leaps into the rest of the line. That micro break isn't a slip, it's a moment of doubt broadcast to thousands. By preserving that hesitation, Kurt allowed vulnerability to shine through, making listeners complicit in his uncertainty. It's not just a line, it's a window into his soul. There's a time signature shift in Pennyroyal Tea. While the studio version rides a steady 4/4 groove, the live, unplugged arrangement pushes moments into a 6/8 feel, creating a rolling tide of hesitation. Listen for that subtle hiccup in the drum pattern right before he sings. Want some? Take it. As the beat seems to stretch one extra tick. That irregular pulse mirrors the heartbeat of someone about to falter. It's a rhythmic clue that his world was no longer anchored in predictable measures, but floated in unstable intervals. The shift is so seamless you might not consciously notice, yet subconsciously you sense the ground tilting beneath your feet. Also, during the brief exchange between songs, pay attention to how Cobain interacts with the sound engineer. You see him lean into the monitors, offering a quiet thumbs up that almost looks forced. That small gesture conveyed reassurance to the crew more than to the audience. It reminded listeners that he was holding together not just for fans, but for himself. Yet his glance was fleeting. A wink that faded before the camera could linger. That split-second moment was a silent plea for someone to see his struggle, to understand that the show was as much a performance as it was an act of endurance. And if you pause the screen on that final fade out, you can see the reflection of empty stage lights in the lens, an afterimage of absence. That double exposure cements the message. Kurt's light had faded. One of the most overlooked Easter eggs lies in the audio mixing itself. During the quieter passages, you can hear the faint creak of Kurt shifting weight on the wooden stage floor. That ambient noise isn't an accident or poor sound capture. It was left unfiltered to amplify intimacy. Producers consciously chose to preserve the floorboard's resonance, reminding us this wasn't any TV set. It was his living confession, broadcast worldwide. Notice the delicate layering of audience, applause that swells behind him, then recedes into silence as he begins the next verse. That breathing space forms an echo chamber for his voice, magnifying every fragile syllable. On, dumb. You'll catch an extra hum from the guitar's bottom string, a soft grunt following his vocal exhale. It's almost subliminal, but if you listen through good headphones, it feels like a whisper directly in your ear. A private plea hidden within the performance of a global icon, truly profound. Listen to how the audience reacts when he begins. Pennyroyal Tea. Instead of relying on the usual roar, the crowd offers a hushed murmur, almost reverential. That collective restraint wasn't a recording fluke, it was a spontaneous hush as fans caught on to the solemn atmosphere he orchestrated. Engineers intentionally mixed more room ambience into this segment, preserving each caught breath as part of the score. You can even hear footsteps on stage between songs, crew members stepping back respectfully after lighting a candle or adjusting a mic. Those subtle footsteps form a rhythm of their own, reminding viewers this show was as much ritual as it was music. When you isolate the unedited track, the mic picks up sounds as delicate as the rustle of Kurt adjusting his guitar strap. Every incidental noise becomes part of the steamy canvas he painted. A tactile soundscape of a man on the brink. Even a distant stage monitor hum remains audible. Moving beyond sound, consider the stage props again. More precisely, the lilies scattered at his feet. Lilies traditionally symbolize both purity and death, bridging life's innocence with the final farewell. Notice how Kurt arranged them in clumps of 3, 5, and 8. Numbers that hold personal significance throughout his life. 3 echoed the trio of band members, 5 mirrored the letters in his birth name, Kurt, and 8 alluded to the octave shifts within his chords. These flower clusters watched him like mourners, silently recording each emotion. The black candles flickering behind him cast rotating shadows that seemed to dance in sync with the music's rhythm. Each candle stood equidistant, marking points on an invisible clock. The time frozen at the moment he chose to say goodbye. If you pause on a frame, you'll observe some candles burning lower on one side, hinting at unbalanced days, moments he felt pulled down by gravity he couldn't escape. It's chilling indeed. Camera editing further amplifies the underlying narrative. Notice the cut at 40:12 between Plateau and Oh Me. Instead of transitioning on the chorus, the editor holds the shot on Kurt's empty guitar stool for a split second. That lingering shot isn't a mistake. It emphasizes absence. By drawing focus away from the performance, viewers experience a sensation of loss before the next song begins. Observe also the color grading. Frames during his intros are tinted slightly cooler, hinting at his emotional distance, while later shots on All Apologies shift to warmer, sepia, ting tones. Those subtle shifts guide emotion subconsciously. Then there's the flash frame. Just 2 frames at 756, where the camera momentarily cuts to backstage wiring. That accidental? Or was it intentional? Glimpse breaks the fourth wall, reminding viewers this production is constructed. Yet here lies genuine human despair. It's as though Kurt wanted us to see behind the curtain, to acknowledge the artifice around his authentic farewell. So hauntingly raw. For those wondering why MTV considered cutting sections, pay attention to the brief interlude after. Where did you sleep last night? The closing seconds of that track include Kurt softly saying, "I'm sorry." That apology wasn't part of the song's lyrics. It was his candid response to an unseen prompt or internal reflection. Producers feared including it would break the show's polished veneer, revealing his fragile state too bluntly. Yet they left it in, preserving his vulnerability. And if you listen closely at 9:45, you can hear a staff member quietly whisper in his earpiece, "Sacrifice everything." It's unclear whether they were cueing him or reacting to audience safety, but the phrase resonates as a deeper instruction: to sacrifice fame, comfort, even life itself. These unguarded moments were reluctantly kept, buried deep in the video mix, waiting for attentive ears to unearth them years later. Over 2 decades later, those snippets spark fresh debate and chilling reinterpretations.